Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Lee, and I'm so glad that you clicked on this video. What you're about to watch is one of our Brotherhood breakfast gatherings at Church on the Move. And this year, we're talking about igniting the fire of God inside of us so that it burns brightly and makes an impact on the world around us. And our hope is that this video will fan that flame in you so that you can make a difference. So let's dive into it.
Hey guys, good morning. It's good to be in the house. I see a lot of friends and familiar faces. If we don't know each other, my name's Jesse Andersen. I am the middle of 5 kids of our speaker today, my dad, Kirby. And if you don't know the Andersen clan, we're 17 strong with wives and kids, and we are building on the legacy that our parents, Kirby and Gail, have been pouring a foundation for nearly 50 years together. My dad doesn't look that old, but yesterday turned 68 and ages pretty well. But we're following as kids in that legacy. We all grew up loving Jesus, serving the church, and we still are, which we probably should get a trophy for, because 5 homeschooled pastors' kids ending up being somewhat sane and still loving Jesus and serving the church, that doesn't really happen. So that's a testament right away to the kind of family root system that we have. You know, it's easy to think, especially in today's day and age, we hear a lot about failures that guys go through and not finishing well. And it's easy to think that it's a pipe dream that to have a strong family, to live a fulfilling life, to finish strong, that's not even possible, that it's kind of a pipe dream. But my dad is proof that it can be done. And you're going to get to hear from him today on that. So many of you already know him, and you know him as a friend and as a coach. He does so much to pour into other people's lives. But you're going to get to hear from his recent journey of going through cancer treatment, which I think is going to be really special. Obviously, a very significant life event. And just to go through that and for you to be able to learn from the uncertainty, the discomfort that he went through in that season, I think it's going to be really special today. And I think it's going to flow out of that soil that is so rich of a life well lived. Let me say this to you. No matter what obstacle you're facing in your life right now, I believe there's an invitation on offer from God to hear something that can benefit you in your season of life. So you might be going, cancer treatment. Yeah, I'm not even thinking about that. Gosh, that sounds so hard, but I can't relate. There is something in your life, though, that you're dealing with that I think if you connect the dots and if you allow God to speak to you, you'll be able to learn something today. And I believe that God does want to speak to you, whether it's directly something you hear from stage, whether it's a side conversation with the Holy Spirit while what's going on stage is happening, whether it's a conversation with a friend or a brother as you're going out to your car. I really want to exhort you to raise your expectancy. I believe God can speak to you and that he will speak to you if you allow him. So don't miss that today. My dad is a lifelong learner. He's a time management guru. He's a discipline machine. He's an enthusiast of the mysteries of the world. He's a bushcrafter, and he's a lover of classic rock. But above all, he is a husband. He is a father. He is Papa. And he is a friend. So please give a warm welcome and your respect to my dad, Kirby Andersen.
Okay.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. First of all, Johnny, watch it. I got a microphone a lot more than you do, buddy. No, we are thrilled to have Kirby and Jesse. Do you have a wrestling match later today? I love those shoes, man. And Jared, sane and normal. 4 out of 5 isn't bad, but no, this family means a lot to me and to our church. Kirby has been a friend and a mentor in my life, one of just a handful of men that I consider a spiritual father to me. And so having this conversation I've been looking forward to this, and I know that you have too. And I would just say this to all of you in the room. If you're familiar, and a lot of you are, some of you aren't, John Eldredge gives kind of the different stages of a man's life. And the last stage is probably the most important, and that's the sage. It's the man who's experienced a lot of life, but also experienced a lot of God. and because of that has a lot of wisdom and insight into everything about life. And Kirby dwells in that sage space for so many of us. And so might be a good week to like take your journal out or, flip over one of those cards and take some notes, because it is to our peril if we don't learn from the sages in our lives. And if you don't have a sage in your life, well, you're going to get one today, okay? So let's dive into this, Kirby. Before I open my iPad, I know what the first question is, and that is just, a lot of people know your story, but for those that don't know you, you've been around here a long time. Just give us a real high 30,000-foot view of kind of your walk here at Church on the Move, the different roles that you've had, and a little bit of what you're doing now, and then we'll dive into what's been happening in the last couple of years.
Well, thank you, Lee. Good morning, guys. This is a real honor. As I said, I've been here 5 times now, and I just want to just real quick give my congratulations to Johnny and to Mark. I know these guys. I've known them a long time. I watched them at the very beginning, and you guys are a real inspiration of just to watch your faithfulness, your obedience. And you started off with just a handful of guys, and look what in the heck happened. We got over 550 guys here today. I don't know of another place that does this on a regular basis. There may be. I don't know of it. And I think we ought to show some appreciation to these guys and to our pastors today, shall we? Just so good, guys. Thank you. And I'm so proud of the rest of you guys for showing up early on a Friday morning. It's always a minor miracle to see that happen. And it's an honor to be here. So my name's Kirby Andersen. Jesse kind of went through our family. That's the main thing that I think that I want people to know, because that's my best accomplishment. The thing that I love the most and is the most important to me, and I've had a lot of titles, but at the end of it all, I may not have anybody around that bed when I'm getting ready to go home who's calling me pastor, although it's music to my ears. But honey and dad and papa, man, that's where it's at, guys. And so been very, very blessed there. And I'm also glad to have my grandson and my oldest grandson here today. So that's also just extremely special. I've been in ministry 45 years, and 35 of those years were in 3 great churches. This was one of them. And been in pastoral roles. I was a senior pastor for 19 years. Got to run a little place out of town here for 5.5 years called Dry Gulch, USA. Yeah, any deputies in the house today? Very special time, and I got to know and serve with so many of you. Those were really great years there. And what I'm doing now for the last 10 years, I was working with churches doing strategic planning, helping them. But this last year I made a shift, and I am just focusing just on Christian men, and mainly those that are within church leadership, because that's what I know, that's what I love, and I'm trying to help guys to not only build what God has called them to build, but not lose their family or their health in the midst of all of that. And it doesn't have to be an either or. So that's what I'm all about right now.
Right, and it's making a huge difference. I think a lot of people in this room would know some of what you just shared. What I don't know that everybody knows, even people that know you, is that you've been on a 14-year journey with a battle with cancer. And so just give us a high level of when you first got this diagnosis and kind of what led up to the last couple of years.
Yeah, 14 years is a long time. In fact, it created a mindset. I'm kind of on the other side of it right now, as we'll say, but that's a long time. And it was right after I had moved back here that I was diagnosed with early stage, slow-growing prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is something that we're hearing a lot about today. Many of you guys have maybe dealt with it or are dealing with it. And so, but I was only 53 at the time when I got it. And anytime anybody hears the word cancer over them, it's a big deal. Shannon just went through that. You get a taste, and others of you have had this. And it sends a ripple through you, because you know that there's an end game in this whole thing. And Jesse joked, yeah, the kids have always called me the Highlander, and all they've just known is they just think I'm going to be around, and the reality is it's not. But that was too early then, and so I'm pretty conservative in my approach to most things, and especially with medicine. I believe in first principles, and there's a lot that I love about the medical world that we have available to us today, but there's a lot that I'm not impressed with. And I didn't want to do the conventional treatments, surgery, radiation, chemo. Didn't have to yet because it was early. But I found out that there was a lot of research that had been done on just lifestyle management. And I felt like that there was a lot of good Bible correlation with those things. And at the top of that list, it was nutrition, exercise, stress management, and a loving support network. Well, the last one I'd been extremely blessed with, but I found out that there were a number of things that I needed to tighten up. You know, there's an ounce of prevention, there's a pound of cure. And when you get hit with something a little acute, then you kind of got to go into the pound of cure. And one of the things that I hit the most was on nutrition. And I found out that there had been a lot of great stuff in fighting prostate cancer with going with a plant-based eating diet. So for years now, you may have known me as the token vegan in the house. I come to these breakfasts, but I never eat. You know, they look really great. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. But I made a massive shift. I'm a farm boy. And I had dialed it in. That's been my life for 14 years. Some of you guys gripe about the Daniel fast at the beginning of the year. Dude, that's my life. And yet I eat pretty good. I don't have to do that right now, but I still choose to do that. But in any case, with God's help, and I really felt his wind in my sails. With his help, it kept that PSA number at bay for 12 years. There was really no statistical change in that. And yet there were dozens of decisions every day where I was choosing what would go in my mouth and what I was eating and what I was doing just in the context of mitigating cancer. And it was always there. It was just in the background. But even my urologist said, I don't have any other patients like you. And I looked healthy. The only number that wasn't right was that PSA.
Yeah. And you had such an incredible game plan and such a great discipline. I mean, Kevin Neiman just said to the three of us there, you look up discipline in the dictionary and there's a picture of Kirby there. Like and all of us need that as men, is just like if we set our mind to something and make choices that align with that decision, like you were the epitome of that. You were taking good care of yourself, you had a great family, but you also are a man of faith, and so there was lots of prayer around this. And for 12 years, like you said, everything was going well. And I think this is an important part of the story right here, because even when you're doing all the right things, sometimes things don't work out the way you thought they would. Some of you are going through that right now. And so 2 years ago, after 12 years of just really kind of defying the odds, and your doctor's going, there's nobody that does it like you, it took a turn. Talk about that.
PSA, I was getting that checked regularly, and all of a sudden it was starting to tick upward. And man, it was alarming. It was frustrating. It was confusing. And I had kind of settled in to this, with what I was doing. And I really didn't spend much time asking why, but I knew something was different. And I knew that I couldn't just keep only doing what I had been doing. And I was faced with this reality that what I hated and what I didn't want to do, I was going to have to consider. Because it really came down to the lesser of two evils is really what it was. That's the way that I was dealing with it at that time. And so as I sought it out, I began to go back and do more research. Jesse said, I'm a learner. I do my own. And I found that the best option I felt like for me would be a form of radiation. And at first I wanted seed radiation because it was the least affected a lot of other things, some radioactive seeds implanted in your prostate, and it does its work over a few weeks, goes inert, boom, you're in and out, and I thought, that's what I want. And so I began to search for the world's best. I just thought, dang it, if I got to do this, I don't want to be somebody's just rep. You know, I don't want to you just getting some experience with me. And I found him. And he was the head of the Department of Radiation at University of Texas at MD Andersen. And no doubt in my mind, he was the top in his field. And I thought, man, everybody in the world's got to be trying to see him. I reached out and doggone, he said, come on down. Now I had to wait 3 months to get in to see him. But when I did, I got down there and I went through a couple of days of scans. I've never been in that many machines and all kinds of stuff. An amazing place down there. And then we met, and good news was, felt that he could treat me, would be willing to, super kind man. The bad news was that it was no longer contained to just the prostate, that it had begun to spread out. It got into a couple of lymph nodes, seminal vesicles, still close, it was localized, nothing throughout the rest of my body. And man, that was another ripple that went through me, because that's when the game changes at that point. And he said, seed radiation is no longer a good thing. He said, we need to shift over to proton radiation. And he said, you're at the best place in the world. And but the difference what that meant, Lee, is that Gail and I had thought that we could maybe have 1 or 2 days down there for this procedure. And now we're looking at 8 weeks. I needed to be down there.
Yeah. Kirby, there was some prep work that you had to do before you went down there. And it was tough. So talk a little bit about what you had to do in preparation and how that was difficult for you as a man, kind of what you were going through. And then we'll talk a little bit about those days down in Houston.
Well, we started with the radiation. I didn't start, but he said that was going to happen. But there were some things that had to take place. First of all, I had to get scheduled, and they were backed up. They were building and all this stuff. And that was in August of 2023. I didn't start radiation until the following March. And so the big thing that they were concerned about was stopping the cancer. Obviously, I was too. This thing was more aggressive. And they told me, he said, I want to put you on hormone therapy. He says, testosterone is like gasoline to aggressive prostate cancer. He says, we got to suppress your testosterone. I had felt this was coming. I'd known about this. I hated it worse than anything. I don't like the side effects. It was just wrong. You are jacking with a man's software at that point. Everything that makes us what we are comes from that. And the consequences on the other side, I didn't know. The side effects during it, it was just like this was all just caving in. But he says, we can stop it. And it'll give us a chance, and we'll shrink those tumors, and it'll be more susceptible to the radiation. Well, what in the heck are you going to do? And God's peace came on Gail and I in that office. And before I left town, I took the first 2 injections in my belly. And within 3 days, my healthy testosterone of around 600, which wasn't bad. I feel like Trump right now. It wasn't.
No one's ever seen anything like it.
Nobody's seen anything like it. It was amazing. Not bad for 66, you know. Oh, those days. Within 3 days, it was 0. And I had to change my pronouns. Hallmark movies were my favorite. Cried through every one of them. In all fairness, though, I went through menopause. Seriously. It threw me into menopause. My wife and every woman who hears that takes a little bit too much joy in that. Hot flashes all day long, nonstop for a year and a half. Lost muscle mass until a few weeks ago I could barely do 3 push-ups. Weight gain in places that I'd never had that trouble before. Weepy, that may show up some today, just weepy. But the biggest thing, guys, is it stole my libido. Can you imagine a life where you don't have a sexual thought every 90 seconds? 90 minutes? 90 days? A year and a half? Nothing. Even when I tried, it was like, no, nothing's happening. When your wife, if she's gone through this before, and says, honey, I'm happy to love you and to be involved physically with you, but honestly, I really don't need it, and you get offended over something like that, believe me, I understand. It's just not there. And in fact, it's probably even a greater gift when they continue to want to be your lover, when they really don't have to. It's amazing. It's the first time that I understood what it might be like to be in heaven and where this whole sexual thing isn't a deal. I can't explain it, and you won't get it, but I'm just telling you, that's the way it was. So we had 6 months after that. I was going through this, getting shots every month. February comes, I get scheduled for March, and that began the prep. We had to move. That was another huge thing. God, how are you going to provide for us during this time? Unbeknownst to me, my son Jared reached out to his siblings. Another story of just this family affair that was going on. And they decided to contact some family friends and just spread the word. And one night he showed up at my house with the biggest wad of cash I've ever held in my hand and just said, Dad, here's the love of so many. And that wad of cash covered all of our living expenses for 2 months in Houston. God just took care of it all. And it was the one time that I first of many times that I felt like, son, I know you're not liking this. I got you. I got you. And then once we moved down there, then there was another time I had to go down for 2 days for scans and markers. Yeah. And it was another low. That night before I had to go into surgery to have markers placed in my prostate. I had to go under anesthesia. I hate that stuff. I hated it. And I sat in that hotel room and it was, God, is there no other way? I do not want to do this. And Josh called. And man, so good to have sons like this to grow up. And all the things that I would be saying to him, he said to me, Dad, you got this. I know it's tough, but we're proud of you. You're taking the steps. You can do this. And I said, yeah, I can.
An element that I think we've got to point out before we move on to what happened in Houston is it'd be nice if God the Father said to all of us, if you follow me, I'm going to remove all the hard stuff in your life. But that was never the promise. The promise was, you will have trouble, but I will be with you. In the midst of it, I will be with you. And what I love, when Kirby and I talked earlier, he said we all want control, but control is an illusion. What we actually can have is hope in the Father. That no matter what we go through, and Kirby was even saying, even Jesus the Son had that same conversation that you had in the hotel room when he was in the garden, saying, is there another way for you in the midst of, I think it was about 10 days into treatment, you said something shifted in you. So talk about that.
Yeah, so we have a few moments, big story.
Yeah.
I will tell you this, since you were poking fun at these flowing locks up here.
Beautiful.
This wasn't a fashion statement. This was my personal therapy. I was having to say yes to so darn many things that I didn't want to. I said, can I do one thing that I want to do? And I said, honey, would it be all right if I just grew my hair out again, child of the 70s? So Dr. Neiman can figure all this stuff out of why that was there. Part of it is still the control that I'm in here, but God said it's okay. And it was a good time to grow out the hair because it was ugly there for a while. And anyway, and it's just continued to be this reminder of God's goodness to me. And yeah, anyway, so when I got down there, I started radiation, 38 treatments, Monday through Friday for 8 weeks over that time. I had to go in. And you referred to, because I called it, it's amazing what they've created. There's only 8 places like this in the United States, and this is the newest one. I call it Stargate Portal. When I go in, I have to lay on a glass table. I've got markings all over me, scantily clad. I lost all my modesty in there over a couple of months, and they were so kind, laying me on this thing. And then when they're getting ready, there's a chime that goes off, which basically tells everybody else besides me, you need to get out because the radiation's coming. And that just tells you right there what the heck is going on. This is toxic. And yet, this is what my option was. And as I laid there during that time, I had a ritual every day because I knew it was going into it. I was reminded over and over and over again, I do not want to be here. I do not want this happening. But I prayed as it was going and they were getting the measurements and then it was starting. My affirmations, my confessions were the same every day. Father, I don't know all that's going on here, but you do. I have your peace. I'm trusting you. You said you were my shield, my buckler, my high tower. This radiation is going to hit that cancer and the cancer only. And I'm asking you to be a shield and insulate everything else, every cell, every tissue, every nerve, every muscle organ. And I'm trusting you, Father. I don't understand how this works, but you got this in control. And then I just laid there and thought of my family. I shared with you before, I've always marveled in Nehemiah 4 that when they were under a great threat and they were having to rebuild the wall and laying brick with one hand and the other hand on a sword because they were being threatened. And Nehemiah called them together and he said, when I blow the trumpet, I want you to rally. And he says, and I want you to fight for your wives, to fight for your sons, to fight for your daughters, to fight for your homes. He never said fight for yourself, because sometimes there's just not enough fight in it to do it for yourself. But by God, when your family's on the line and your home's on the line, let's get with it. We're going. And it was that way day after day after day. 10 days when I was into this stuff, there was a problem. I was so focused on everything that was going in because I can't get into all of it, but it had to do with bladder management. You had to have your bladder to a certain capacity for this. They didn't tell you this, and their training on it was horrible, and I offered to do a video for them because this sucked. I thought, come on, you guys are MD Andersen. Can we not figure out training on this thing? That's me, I guess. But anyway, it was rough. And there would be some days you'd have to have an ultrasound, and if your capacity wasn't right, you had to go back to the waiting room. And if it was too much and you had to let some out, and if you went too far, then you had to sit there and wait till it filled up again. And I told Gail, I said, I'm going to figure this thing out. I'm not doing this much more. But after 10 days of this, I was so focused on all of this, I had lost myself. And I told her, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm getting the eyes off myself. I'm going back to focusing on other people. That's who I am. That's what I do. I'm going to start pastoring again. And it changed just like that. I took the thing off of myself. I figured out all that other crap, and I got back in there, and I just pastored the dog out of everybody. Receptionist, attendants, had them all. Knew their families, knew their names, their histories. I was the brightest ray of sunshine in that place, and it needed it, I'm telling you what, because I sat in the waiting room with gowns with a whole bunch of other guys who were hanging. It was rough down there. And I'm telling you what, you don't have to look too far in a place like that to find stories far worse than mine. I'm sitting here, I got out on the other side. There's some people who don't go home. And all of a sudden I realized I don't have the problems that I think I do. There's always somebody who's got it worse than you. And it changed me. And at that point in time, we started flourishing. God gave us a word at the beginning of the year when Pastor Witt taught out of Psalm 1, blessed is the man. Blessed, happy, fortunate, to be envied, flourishing. We said, that's it. How in the heck could we expect to flourish going through cancer treatment? But that's exactly what happened. At one point, about halfway through this, my wife was embarrassed to say it, but she said, honey, I would never want to say this outside of here, but I feel like we're honeymooning. God was so good to us at that time. We were thriving, and many people didn't even know that I was going through cancer treatment. It was just amazing to know how God was with us during that time. And it all started with shifting my attention to others.
Yeah. As men, we are by nature selfish. And so Christ gives us this picture of selflessness, of putting our focus on others. And to be clear, selflessness is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And we can get so focused on our own lives and the problems that we're going through, the things that we're building, that we don't pick our head up and see that we are here in order to bring light and life, provision and goodness to the people around us, starting with our family and moving out from there. And that when we do, giving ourselves up, losing our own life, we find what we're looking for. And in the midst of that shift in thinking, you said your time in Houston was some of the best time that you had. It's like the best part of it was the worst part of it.
Our happiest days in 2024 were in Houston.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Houston. It was what God did and what we learned. And we sat down and actually put that down on paper. What is it?
Yeah.
What has happened in our life, and how are we going to take that home and not let this just be a blip on the screen? Our lives have changed.
Yeah.
We changed our marriage. We changed our lifestyle. We changed all kinds of things to be able to continue to keep moving forward.
Kirby, we're out of time, but I want to give you the last word. You got about maybe 4 minutes here before we have to wrap this up. You don't go through something like that without God completely changing your perspective. You've shared some of that, but is there anything more that you would love to share with this group of men?
Yeah, I'll hit the high points for the sake of time. So guys, if you haven't got it here today, I think the most important thing that I want to encourage you on is to trust God when you don't understand. And not only that you don't understand, or if you have to do hard things, I'm talking about where you have to go where you don't want to go, and you have to do what you don't want to do. And as Lee said, every man that I admire in the Bible had to do that, starting with Abraham, Moses, Joseph, all the way up to our Lord and Savior Jesus. Jesus said, if there's another way, I'm in for that. I don't want to do this. But they all did it. And so, as my friend Pastor Scott French, who said here today, we often think that the norm is not having those kind of problems. No, the norm is having those problems. It's not that you don't have it. It's how are you trusting God in the middle of these things. My scripture was trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will direct your steps. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And that's what I encourage you. Our friend Dave Jewett taught me this about 5 years ago. He shared it here. The greatest prayer and question that I have learned that has built my faith And my faith has grown more in the last 2 years than in any other time in my life. Yeah. And I've been through some other hard things. But nothing has changed me like this single prayer. Father, what do I need to be trusting you for in this? Yeah. It's not always just problem solving or delivering me out. Sometimes it's going through the fire and not being burned. Yeah. Sometimes it's going through the floodwaters and yet not being overwhelmed. And I experienced that. God's hand was on me, and I had toxic stuff shooting all over me, and God spared me in that. And I think so that's the most important thing. And I just want to tell you guys, this is not a story here about how to beat prostate cancer. Right. This is a story about trusting God in the middle of a crap storm that you don't want, you don't understand, and it does not make sense. But our God loves us, knows right where it's at. We're all going to die. That should not be a surprise. We just don't know when and how. Some people don't go through this. I made it through this, but at some point in time, there's going to be an end game. Clock's ticking. So what's most important is how are we trusting the Lord, and do we remember what really matters? Because I'm just telling you, the stuff that's on your minds today that you're worried about and frustrated about probably isn't going to even be in your memory banks 20 to 30 years from now. Yeah. What I'm thinking about are these guys right down here, and my daughters, and my daughters-in-law, and my 7 grandkids. Those are the ones that I'm after. How am I growing closer to Jesus right now, who understands my brokenness, and I'm still just getting a glimpse of how extensive that really is, and how do we fulfill our lives. And I think along that line on family, do I have time for one more quick story? So this was a family affair, and that was a real joy for me, that it wasn't just me going through this and toughing it out. I have submitted to my kids, and I said, you are going to be involved in this. Last fall, I had the second to last injection for this hormone. They asked me to stay on it a little bit longer. Every injection was gritting my teeth. And the nurse who gave it to me, she hit the wrong spot, had a big lump that grew after that. I went home so mad. And I had one left a month later, and I went home to Gail and I said, dang it, this is good enough. I've already gone farther in what I'm doing. I ain't doing it anymore. I'm not going to do it. She said, you better talk to your kids. So I texted all of them, let them know what I was thinking. And God bless them, I got the same thing back from every one of them, almost virtually. Dad, we understand. This sucks. Dad, you've come this far. You've done everything they've asked you to do, and it has meant the world to us. You can do this. Finish strong. And I did. And I took the last injection. A few weeks later, I got rescanned. Got a call in November. We can't find a thing. Wow. So I think my last word is just, guys, let's finish strong, shall we? Yeah. We can do this, but we can't do it alone. Right. God will be with you, and we need relationships like this, and we need to nurture the relationships of our family, because that's what means the most. Yes. And that's why right now, I'm on the other side. This year's a year of rebuilding. I'm building back. I'm halfway back on my testosterone. Praise the Lord. Just got the count. Got to get the strength back. But I'm also revving the engines. I am more fired up to be helping guys to improve their habits and rhythms, to have more of the life they really want, and especially around their family, make changes in their health if necessary. I'm excited about those things that are coming. And yeah, I don't know if we can share my email or something, because if you're interested, let me know and I'll keep you posted on that.
We can blast it through email. Guys, would you join me in thanking Kirby for sharing this story with us? Thank you.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.